Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to take a look at two different sets of Klein tools KNECTs, and one is a multi-bit set and the other has something that I wish the other had. We're going to get into this, take a look at it, and see how interchangeable some of this stuff is. So let's get these open. The first set here is a 31 piece. Basically it's a multi-screwdriver set. It gives you all kinds of crazy tips and everything else. None security, but gives you a bunch of them, and you get some 1/4 inch sockets. We'll take a look at that a little bit closer. If you're paying attention, this is made in Taiwan. Second thing we're going to look at is just this 10-piece 10-in-1 screwdriver. 10-in-1 screwdrivers aren't really all that unusual, but this one has that 11/32 that I've been talking about so much. So we're going to get into this as well, and we're going to see how much stuff kind of goes from one to the other and how they compare. This also, if you're paying attention, is made in Taiwan. Okay, so digging right in here, we could probably pick up on a few similarities between these two things. It looks like the base driver for this multi-screwdriver and this multi-screwdriver are almost identical. It also looks like this 3/8 driver and this 3/8 driver, along with this multi-tip head, is also identical. Now where it starts to differ is the 5/16 driver. That's a little different because over here we actually have a 5/16 and 11/32. Even the two handles, I think, are almost identical. I do not see any real difference between them other than one says KNECTs and the other says Impact 10-in-1. So they have different part numbers. Yes, they do. But they're very, very much similar. Guess we could leave that out. So let's just see. This is the KNECTs. Right into that. And let's see. This is the Impact one, 10-in-1. Right into that. Both are identical. Let's get the 3/8 out. That's well lubricated, as is that one. This 3/8 piece, also identical. This has just a number 2 Phillips, a double-sided 1/4 3/16 straight in it. And this is the identical tool. Yep, 3/16 and 1/4. So that's the exact same thing. Has a decent ball detent. I don't think it would fall out. I cannot see a spot for the ball detent to get into. I will say these are nice and slender for a 3/8 impact socket. If we were to put that on our favorite impact gun of choice, that's actually pretty slim. It's a very slim profile and fits on there very well. Putting the screw tip on there, it's not bad. They pull out, but I mean, this is all very oily and slippery, but they're really not too bad. They're pretty decent, I have to say. I don't know that you'd lose everything on a screw, but you might. So that's those. They're very similar. Now let's get down to the 5/16 driver. That pulled out a little harder. It does look as though... Okay, so this is spline drive. Yeah, the 5/16 side seems to pull out, or this other side seems to pull out pretty hard. They're both quarter, and it just could be because both are really oily. So that's an identical piece between the two. So there's interchangeability here. Now this is, I believe we've seen this in other sets. This is the non-magnetized spline drive tip, and they've put it in one of these sets. We could compare that. It's actually something a little bit different than what we had in our magnetized sets. If we look at the magnetized sets, that actually is a different length still, and I'm going to guess that they came up with that length so that it works with the screwdriver. Now, just out of curiosity, what happens when we put a magnetized head? So I don't know that you'd actually get down in there with the fastener, but you could use the magnetized head, hopefully that's picking up, with this combination spline drive socket. Now, this is an 1132 and a 5/16. Ideally, you would have 1132 and 3/8 for working on light fixtures. But the fact we have an 11/32, which is common for number 8 screws, is really good in this set. I'm very happy to see that. You've heard me talk about this a while on the channel now. There we finally have something with that. Let's get our magnet tips out of the way here. Let's take a look at this 5/16. This is a pretty heavy wall. In fact, our combo socket is actually, I don't know if you can see that well enough or not, is actually a smaller wall. But when you go to put this on your impact, it still has a decent profile. It's like a mid-depth, semi-deep driver, which is, it's good. There's nothing wrong with that. That would be for your number 6 fasteners. Here's how this would look on your impact. The profile isn't super bad. It's not very compact. But again, these are not shallow and they're not deep. They're semi-deep sockets. They're like a mid-depth. Overall, the socket is the depth of a deep socket, but because you're kind of halfway, it's like a mid-depth. Now, the screwdriver tip in the 5/16 are these double-ended? They are. You have Torx and number 1 Phillips. What size Torx do we have here? T25. And you have number 2 Robertson and number 1 Robertson on the other side. And this is kind of akin, well, I wonder how that would hold up as a 1/4-inch driver. This is kind of akin to something they had in the very early 10-in-1s, and these things blew out. So I would be very curious to see how that would hold up in an impact. I don't think necessarily very well. But double-ended stuff comes with the kit. The double-ended socket with the 11/32 comes with the screwdriver. Now, diving into the kit a little further, we have a lot of different tips. Now, you're going to have to use these tips with, this is your magnet holder right here, and you have to have it in your 3/8 socket. The other end of this is a double-ended screwdriver tip for your flathead. So if you want to use any of these, like, okay, so we have number 1, number 2, number 3 Phillips. We also have 3 number 2 Phillips here, and the screwdriver tip comes with a number 2 Phillips. So there is no shortage of number 2 Phillips. The straight sizes, there's a straight 3/16 and a straight quarter, which was also here, so that's duplicated in the set. We have a 3/32, a 7/64, an 1/8, 5/32, 7/32 quarter hex, and the quarter hex just basically a shank that is the same both ways there. Then we have T10, T15, T20, T25, T27, T30, and T40. And the thing with the torques and all of these is you really don't get a lot of depth in what you're hooking to. So if it's in something narrow, you're not necessarily going to get deep inside of something. Say we were taking this impact gun apart, we can't actually get down to those fasteners to take it apart. I think that's a T15 or a T10, and you can't get down in there with the fasteners because the throat of this is too big, so keep that in mind. There's also the combination Robertson and flathead in here, the number 2 size. They do not have the number 1. So that would be that. Now, you can also take with this, if you're using the kit, you can take a tip and stick it in here. Now this is not retaining, but you can put this in here just like this and it would work. But again, if you're trying to get into something, you can't. This is too bulky. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're getting into things like this impact gun is, with the fasteners recessed into holes. This stuff may not work best for you. Okay, now we can take that out, actually push that inside the tool. We could get out our socket adapter, which is in there pretty good. We can get out our socket adapter, stick that on there, and we can now turn this into a nut driver, which is quite fascinating to me because, okay, so that's just detent. It holds together pretty well. It's not too bad. So we just made ourselves a 9/16 nut driver, and that's a deep. You can see the hex goes all the way down that socket. There's not much beyond that. Yeah, they're all pretty much that way. Let's lift the quarter, because that, I'm curious to see, and it does not have a magnet in it. I did not expect it to because of how deep it is, but it does not have a magnet in it. Now, it's interesting, and we briefly looked at this set before, because this set kind of complements another one. If you recall this set that we previously looked at, this particular set has the 1/4" ratchet. We'll just put that here like that. So now with the 1/4" ratchet, you can actually use the 1/4" sockets. I'm not quite sure. It might have been better if they came out with the ratchet and the sockets together, but you can see this ratchet is locking. It has the ball lock, and it does lock on these sockets. So that is nice. It's just kind of interesting to me the way they choose to group some of these tools. You would think these sockets would have been better with that ratchet, even though you're missing 11/32 here. It's another opportunity they could have added something. But you have it with these sockets in the set, which is based on the spline hex drive, which is where all of this stuff is going. Like, all of these things are hex drive. So if you had the spline and all of these parts, it might make more sense to have the spline stuff with this and these with that. Just saying. But these sockets, we'll take a look at the 7/16 here. They're nicely made sockets. They're 1/4" sockets. For a 1/4" socket, that's a nice depth. They are definitely impact. Now, I will say, unlike the 1/2" sockets that we were recently looking at, the size is laser etched on these. There's nothing, it's just like these, and even this. Everything is laser etched. Nothing is stamped. So over time, this will wear off. The brown paint will probably stay just because of how thick it is, and it's in this, it's inset in here. But just be aware of that these are not stamped. You may end up either engraving them or trying to stamp them yourself at some point, much like these were not stamped as well. So overall, I think it's interesting that these sets kind of complement each other well, but I also think that it's a little unfortunate that they don't have the stuff to just have a nice set of ratchet with sockets. You have the ratchet with adapter to drive these sockets, and then you have the screwdriver handle with an adapter to drive conventional sockets. I just think it's an interesting thing. I don't necessarily think it's bad. They can sell sets however they want, but if you're trying to get people into your tools, it would make sense to have these sockets with this. And if you're going to go impact heavy on adapters and all kinds of other stuff, maybe having these sockets with the impact stuff. Either way. So I thought we'd take a quick look at this. It's interesting how all of these things, I mean, we blew all this stuff apart here, and it's all pretty much the same things that are hooked together and are interchangeable a fair amount. And you can just put that stuff in here, and you can put this stuff back where it goes. Everything's retained very well. It's not, I will say this 1/4" adapter is almost in there too well, but because it's in the lid, it'll probably take abuse, and you really don't want it falling out. So that's all well and good, I think. The screwdriver, the 10-in-1, it complements or duplicates this other set pretty well. It does have some components that are not available elsewhere, mainly being this end of this screwdriver, this non-magnetic spline adapter, and this 11/32 socket. So that's interesting that there's, it seems like everything that you can get has an element that you can't get otherwise. Like this set actually has a length that is just not quite the same as any of these others as well. So there you can see, here's our two non-magnetic splines, and all of the magnetic splines are a different length. There's no repeating lengths here. I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if they're making them to fit, like in this one's case, is it made to fit this set? in this thing's case is it made to fit the screwdriver, because I think if we took this out of here, I bet you, and it does, you could put that in this case. They're both basically the same. So I guess you can kind of load these up to be whatever you want them to be. This set doesn't particularly waste space as much as some of the others. This is a pretty good waste of space. This one they kind of did okay. These sockets are pretty close together. This is alright. They have stuff in the lid. They took advantage of space they had there. These probably could be a little closer, but not a whole lot if you want to have labels on them. So I guess the space management on this one isn't horrible, but you kind of get the idea. If you like these cases, you're going to like them. If you don't have a use for them, you're not going to be a fan. They do interlock like that, and they come apart just like that. The spacing for the tangs is all the same, so you can even put the large one on the little one if you wanted to, and they come apart relatively easily. This is decent. I think it's, I really like how compact this 3/8 is for running in an impact. That's nice and small. I like that. Some of these things with all these little tiny components, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on how I feel about all of that. Years ago, the first 10-in-1s, they were kind of hard to keep track of all the tips and everything else, but these do seem to hold the stuff better than those old ones did. Hopefully this was interesting. Kind of got into a little bit more than I thought I would, dragging out this other set and comparing things, but I thought it was kind of interesting how these things seem to build on each other as you start getting more of them. There's cross-pollination that you can do. It's not like you can just, these things only work with this and these only work with that. It's all kind of a system, as they say. So hopefully this was interesting. If you have either of these, any of this stuff, leave a comment below. I always like to hear how other people like using the tools that we look at here and things that they saw that maybe I missed. You know, I'm just kind of coming up with this as I'm going. It's easy to overlook stuff. I certainly appreciate another perspective. So if you have any of these and you've used them, are you frustrated with elements of them? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Leave me a comment below. I think all that's neat to talk about. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.